In the middle of August, when the garden is hot and overgrown, and the last thing on your mind is picking up a pair of pruners, some of your most important plants are quietly making a decision. They are choosing how many flowers to set next spring. They are deciding where to direct their energy before the cold comes. And that choice is shaped more than most people realize by what you do, or fail to do, in the next few weeks. I have made every mistake on this list at least once. I cut a rambling rose at the wrong time and lost an entire summer of blooms. I went too deep into an old lavender that never fully came back, and I watched a hydrangea produce nothing but leaves for 3 years running before a neighbor finally explained what I had been doing wrong every single August. Stay especially for plant 7, because what most gardeners do to their hydrangeas right now is the very reason they stop blooming altogether, and the fix is simpler than you think. If you are new here, welcome to the Gardening Grandma. I post every single week with real practical gardening advice from someone who has killed more than her fair share of plants and learned every lesson the hard way. Hit subscribe so you never miss a video, and drop your U.S. state and hardiness zone in the comments right now. I read every single one. Before we get into it, if you want even more help growing healthier plants, getting bigger blooms, and avoiding the costly mistakes most gardeners make, I have put together my complete Gardening Grandma course, and the link is waiting for you right at the top of the description below. Now, let us get into it. Before I name a single plant, one piece of advice that runs across everything on this list: clean, sharp tools matter more than most people give them credit for. A dull pruner does not cut, it crushes. And a crushed stem in August heat with heavy dew and fungal spores everywhere is an open invitation to rot. Bypass pruners, the kind where 2 curved blades slide past each other like scissors, are what you want for living growth. Wipe the blades with rubbing alcohol between plants if you are working through several shrubs in one session. I keep a small jar and a cloth in my bucket, and it takes 10 seconds per plant. The other thing worth saying once is this: the guiding principle for August pruning is restrained and purposeful. You are tidying, removing what is finished, improving airflow, not renovating the entire plant. Any soft new growth you push into a shortening season needs time to harden before frost. Keep that in mind for every plant on this list. Plant 1, lavender. I am opening with lavender because it is the plant where a well-meaning trim at the wrong depth can quietly finish off an otherwise healthy shrub. Lavender is a woody subshrub built like a miniature tree wearing an herb costume. The base and interior are properly woody, hard, and gray. The outer growth is soft and silvery green. The critical thing to understand is that lavender's old wood carries almost no dormant buds. Cut into that bare gray zone and the plant simply sits there. It will not push new shoots. You have made a permanent gap that no amount of patience will fill. I know this because I inherited a lavender from a woman on my street who had been pruning it hard for years. By the time I saw it, the center was nothing but bare gray wood with a thin green fringe around the rim. Nothing I did brought it back. Your August job is a shaping trim after the last flush of flowers has faded. Once the spikes have gone brown and lost their color, take your shears and cut back across the leafy green portion, removing roughly 1/3 of that soft growth, no more. Shape it into a low rounded dome. Think of a loaf of bread or a cushion. That shape is not just cosmetic. A mounded plant sheds water rather than collecting it at the crown. And in a wet winter, water sitting in the middle of a lavender is what rots it from the inside out. The line you must not cross is where the green ends and the bare gray begins. Keep glancing down into the plant as you trim, and leave at least 1 inch or 2 of green above the woody zone at every point. If yours is still throwing blooms into late August, common in warmer zones, skip the shaping trim entirely. Snip the spent spikes as they finish, leave the foliage alone, and save the shaping for early spring once hard frost has passed. Plant 2, climbing and rambling roses. Roses carry more conflicting advice than almost any other plant in the garden, so let me narrow this carefully. I am talking about the big scramblers, the ones with long, flexible canes that clamber over walls, arbors, and fences. Ramblers in particular flower once in a heavy early summer burst, and that display comes entirely off wood the plant grew the previous year. Because they bloom on last year's growth and have long finished by August, late summer is the correct window to work on them. The new canes then have the rest of the season to mature and set buds. Begin where you always begin, dead, damaged, diseased. These plants grow so densely that dead canes get trapped inside the tangle and sit quietly rotting. Work through the inside of the plant rather than skimming the surface. Then comes what I think of as the renewal cut. Pick out roughly 1 in 3 of the oldest canes, the ones that are thicker, darker, and grayer compared to the fresh green growth, and remove them at ground level. This clears congestion, lets light and air through the center, and prompts the plant to send up vigorous new canes from the base, which is where next year's flowers originate. A rambler never renewed slowly becomes a mass of exhausted old wood, carrying a few blooms way up at the top, where nobody can appreciate them. A neighbor of mine had a rambler over her garden gate that had not been properly renewed in 10 years. Once we finally did the job, she had more flowers the following summer than in the previous 4 combined. When tying in new canes, run them as close to horizontal as your support allows. A cane held horizontal rather than pointing skyward opens buds all along its length rather than just at the tip, which means flowers across the whole run instead of a cluster at the top, with bare stem below. Plant 3, clematis. Clematis is where good gardeners get into arguments, because the correct August treatment depends entirely on which type you own. Get the type right, and this is simple. Get it wrong, and you lose a year of blooms. There are 3 groups, and the easiest way to identify yours is by when it flowered. Group 1 blooms in early spring, the vigorous Montana types that cover a shed roof in April and May. These flower on wood produced the previous year, which means the buds for next spring are being laid down right now. Leave them completely alone. If yours has outgrown its space, the correct time to address it was immediately after flowering in late spring. Any cut now removes next year's display wholesale. Group 2 is the large flowered showpiece type, the dinner plate blooms in white, purple, and pink that appear in early summer, often with a lighter second round later on. These are the ones August work actually helps. Once that first heavy flush finishes, go over the plant and remove the spent flowers, cutting back to a strong pair of buds a little way down the stem. That modest trim encourages a second round in late summer and early fall. Keep it light. You are taking a few inches per stem, not reshaping the vine. Group 3 flowers on entirely new growth later in the season, the Viticellas and compact purple types blooming from midsummer onward. These get cut hard, but not in August. Their proper treatment is a heavy cut back to about knee height in late winter or very early spring. For now, all they want is a tidy, pull off dead or crispy foliage, untangle stems that have flopped away from their support, and redistribute the growth evenly across the trellis. Whatever group you have, keep the base of the plant cool and shaded. Clematis are famously described as wanting their heads in the sun and their feet in the shade, and in August heat that cool root run matters as much as anything you do with pruners. Before plant 4, drop your U.S. state and hardiness zone in the comments right now. I read every single one, and several of the plants still to come behave differently depending on exactly where you garden and when your first frost typically arrives. How many of these first 3 do you have in your yard right now, and which ones have you been treating the wrong way without knowing it? Drop your number. If you are not subscribed yet, please do that right now. Every week I put out practical information built for gardeners who want the real story. Hit subscribe and let us keep going. Plant 4, peonies. Peonies are the plant where restraint pays the highest dividends, because almost everything people instinctively want to do to them in August is the wrong move. A peony has spent all spring and early summer with its leaves working hard, manufacturing sugars and shipping them down into those thick, fleshy storage roots. Those reserves are the entire reason you get flowers next May. Cutting a green peony down for the sake of a tidy border is taking money out of your own account. Your August job has 3 parts. First, remove the seed pods if you have not already. After the flowers fade, peonies form fat green pods. Producing seed costs the plant energy that could be stored instead. Follow each spent flower stem down to a healthy set of leaves and snip just above it. That leaves plenty of foliage intact while ending the seed-making project. Second, remove any leaf showing trouble. Peonies are prone to botrytis and leaf blight, and August is when those problems become obvious: brown blotches, dark spots, whole stems collapsing at the base. Cut affected stems to ground level and bin the material rather than composting it. Those spores overwinter in debris and reinfect the plant next spring. Clear fallen leaves from around the crown while you are down there. Third, watch for the foliage beginning to change color. As leaves yellow and brown, they have finished their work and can come off. Once peony foliage has genuinely died down, cut the whole plant to just above ground level and clear every scrap away. That autumn cleanup is your single best defense against next year's disease pressure. Plant 5, daylilies. Daylilies are the workhorse of the garden, nearly indestructible, adaptable to poor soil, and generous with flowers, which is precisely why they get neglected. And by August, most clumps look far shabbier than they need to. Each daylily bloom lasts exactly 1 day. The flowers open in the morning and are finished by evening, leaving behind a wet brownish remnant clinging to the stalk. Those spent blooms look untidy, and worse, they set seed pods if left alone, pulling energy that would otherwise go into next year's crown. Your first task is simple grooming. Run your fingers up each flower stalk and pinch off the spent blooms and any developing seed pods. Takes moments per plant, and the difference in appearance is immediate. Second, deal with the finished stalks. Once every bud on a stalk has opened and faded, that stalk is done. Follow it down into the clump and cut or snap it off at the base close to the crown. A firm downward tug will often pop a spent scape free without any tool at all. Third, groom the foliage. Daylily leaves yellow from the outside of the fan inward, and by August most clumps carry a collection of brown floppy outer leaves. Pull those away by hand. What you should not do is shear the whole clump across the top. Cutting the green foliage into a flat top tuft removes working leaves that are still feeding the roots. For reblooming varieties, the many modern cultivars bred to flower more than once. This grooming is what triggers the second round. Remove spent stalks promptly, water consistently through any dry spell, and many will send up a fresh set of scapes for late season color. Plant 6, summer blooming perennials. This covers a whole category rather than a single plant, and it is where the biggest visible improvement usually comes from, because the perennial border by August tends to look like it has been through something. Coreopsis is the standout for a second flush. After its first heavy display fades, shear the whole plant back by about 1/3, and it will very often reward you with a second round into September. Catmint is the other dependable performer. Once it finishes and flops open in the middle, cut it back by 1/3 to 1/2, and within 2 or 3 weeks you will have a tidy fresh mound of gray-green foliage and a fair chance of more flowers. Perennial salvia and delphinium respond well to having spent flower spikes cut down to a healthy set of leaves. Shasta daisies, veronica, and yarrow all take the same treatment. For plants that have genuinely finished, brown, crispy, no green left in the foliage, cutting back near ground level does no harm. But be honest with yourself. Green leaves are still working, and removing them early weakens the crown going into winter. The third category you leave standing on purpose. Coneflowers and black-eyed Susans produce seed heads that feed goldfinches and sparrows straight through the cold months. Those dark seed heads catch frost in December and look beautiful on a gray morning. Leaving a portion of your border upright is not laziness, It is habitat, and it costs you nothing. Plant 7, Hydrangea. I have saved Hydrangea for last because it is the plant where the wrong August decision produces the most heartbreak, and because the correct action is far more limited than most people expect. The mophead and lacecap hydrangeas, the big blue and pink domes that everyone pictures, form the flower buds for next summer, during late summer and early fall, on the stems standing in your yard at this very moment. Every one of those stems is carrying next year's display inside it right now. Cut them back for tidiness, and you have removed the flowers before they ever existed. This is the most common reason a healthy-looking hydrangea produces nothing but leaves year after year. A woman I know cut her hydrangeas back hard every August for 4 years because she had read they needed pruning. They looked immaculate every fall and produced nothing the following June. She finally stopped cutting them entirely, and the blooms came back the very next spring. The August job is deadheading and nothing beyond it. Follow a faded flower head down the stem to the first fat pair of buds sitting in the leaf joints and cut just above them, typically only a few inches of stem. The buds below your cut are the future. Oakleaf hydrangeas follow the same rule, deadheading only, hands off otherwise. Panicle and smooth hydrangeas are more forgiving because they flower on new growth produced the following spring. But their structural cut still belongs in late winter. For now, deadhead if the finished heads bother you, or leave them standing. Dried panicle blooms hold their shape beautifully through fall and look lovely with frost on them in December. And regardless of which type you have, water deeply through August heat. A plant that dries out during bud formation sets fewer buds. A deep soak once or twice a week at the base of the plant and a few inches of mulch out to the drip line will do more for next summer's display than any cut you could make. Drop your zone in the comments and tell me, which one of these 7 are you tackling first this weekend? And have you ever made one of these August mistakes before? The wrong cut on a hydrangea, or a lavender that never fully came back? I want to hear about it. Share this video with one gardener in your life who has any of these plants in their yard right now. They deserve to know before the window closes. If you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. I post every single week, and I never waste your time. Until next time, happy gardening. Take care of yourselves and take care of those beautiful gardens of yours.